أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين. So I want to welcome everybody to another opportunity of virtual clarity in this beautiful blessed day of Jumu'ah. We begin seeking refuge with Allah, the compassionate, the merciful, the one who can protect us from all of the difficulties and hardships if we only truly seek refuge in Him. And we ask Him to send His peace and blessings and mercy upon Prophet Muhammad, who was sent as an act of compassion to all that exists, all that lives on this earth. And that is our job, to embody that beautiful message. So as believers right now, we find ourselves in a tough situation, circumstances. We consider the circumstances at hand. We have obviously this pandemic. Everybody is, wearing masks and in isolation and concerned about this spread of this pandemic and the lack of medical or scientific certainty about so many things. It's very trying. The lack of any change towards real um, policy effort towards racism and the systemic realities therein. It's one thing for us to protest. It's another thing to paint Black Lives Matter, to remove some statues. Those are great things symbolically, but in terms of change, we're not seeing too much of that. To top it all off, we have the Trump presidency and all that comes with, and then we have a very unfortunately real prospect of 4 more years of a Trump presidency. So it's natural that many people would be down and upset and going through some psychological and mental illness right now. It's very widespread and common. There's no question here in 2020 that it kind of feels like we're all in this bad, almost never ending dystopian movie that we just wish would end. The question we should ask ourselves is, was the Prophet ﷺ and his companions going through worse than us? Was it easy what they went through? Are we going through the worst times in history? It's actually, we're living in heaven compared to the Prophet ﷺ and his companions for over 2 decades, what they faced and what they went through. Any student of the Seerah would know that we have a very comfortable situation for ourselves right now. So it's important that we always do our framing in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. This is the actualization of وَأَشْهَدُ أَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا Rasulullah, that I bear witness, I declare that Muhammad was the messenger of God. And so his example, his character, the way he dealt with life is our example. So the Quran tells us, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Surely in the example of the Prophet ﷺ is the best example for anyone who would like to meet Allah on the Day of Judgment with a good state of being. So when we look at the Prophet ﷺ, we see amazing character of the highest form. إِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. You are on an exalted standard of character, as Allah told him in Surah Noon. And so one of the character traits of the Prophet ﷺ is what we call bashasha, or a state of happiness that led to his facial representation of it. There are so many authentic hadiths throughout the seerah in which the Prophet ﷺ, they said about him, when we saw him, he was smiling. Every time he looked in my face, he smiled. And so throughout the hardships and abuse and turmoil and the general threat of destruction that the Muslims faced, the Prophet ﷺ was generally smiling. And to add to that, we have so many authentic hadiths in which it says, فَضَحِكَ النَّبِيُّ حَتَّى بَدَتْ نَوَاجِدُهُ, that the Prophet ﷺ smiled so much that he started laughing and we could see his teeth. And so that's the Prophet ﷺ and his character. What was the secret of his happiness, considering the fact that he was going through much more hardship than what we've been facing in this first 6 months of this year? Or actually, the way many feel it, the last 3 or 4 months of this year. So it's really, at the end of the day, it's all in our attitude, how we choose to carry ourselves in dealing with whatever it is that we deal with. Let me give you a couple of examples. So, for example, you have one situation where two people with the same physical build, same strength, they're both tasked with carrying some sort of a load. And so the first person carrying the load, same physical abilities. The first person is complaining and it's all heavy and it's so much to do, and that obviously is one character. The other person carrying the same load, carrying the same physical capacity, is happy to do the job, smiling and whistling, and when it's done, it feels like it was just nothing to carry, and so it seemed like no big deal because they were happy to do the job and get it done. What they saw that it needed to be done, and they wanted to be the one to do it. The other one decided to feel like it was a task so difficult to carry. You also have, for example, two sick people, similar physical situation, um, similar lifestyle. They both get sick. Okay, same exact sickness. The first person got sick and they're thinking, oh no, I'm so sick, I'm gonna die, it's so terrible. And now that just adds to the sickness, adds to the pain and the difficulty of what is just a sickness, what is an exception to the norm, which is generally good health. The other person gets sick and they're patient and they're remembering all the blessings of good health and they're remembering how it was and they're anticipating to return back to health. And so then before they know it, they're healthy again. So this is just two ways of dealing with the situation at hand. So at the end of the day, we cannot control what happens to us, but we have absolute control over how we react to what is happening with us and how we deal with it. So I'm going to give you a really beautiful story that really kind of pins down this point that we have to really dig deep and think, how are we dealing with situations and people? So there's a great scholar named Muhammad al-Khudari who lived in Egypt in the late 1800s and in the early 1900s. So as he was getting older, once he felt some very pain and some movement in his stomach, and it got so bad it went on for a couple of days. So he went to the doctors. He's obviously been praying over it. So now he goes to the doctors and he told the doctor, he said, I believe I have a snake in my stomach. And so the doctor is sitting there looking at the other doctor and they're trying to hold back from laughing. And they looked at each other. And so the doctor turned to him and obviously said, well, we know that you cannot have a snake in your stomach. Maybe you do have some sort of worm in your stomach that's causing you a problem. And so then the sheikh was upset. He said, you have no idea what I'm going through, this feeling of this movement. I have a snake in here. This is very serious. And so the doctor said, okay, let us go consult with the pharmacist and the other doctors and see what we can do. So the doctors, they went away and they talked to actually a psychologist. They said, we have a very weird situation that the sheikh here, he believes that he has a snake in his stomach, and this is why. And so we definitely plan on giving him, some sort of stool softener, but we're not sure, if his problem is in his mind at the end of the day. So the psychologist said, okay, yeah, here's what you should do. Give him a really good stool softener that will make him feel like he has to go to the bathroom and, he's just going to want to get it over with when he goes in there. And then I will go find a snake, a dead snake, and I'll put a small dead snake in the actual latrine. So obviously back then they didn't have plumbing, and so you'd have to go into a place, some sort of like an outhouse, and so they could just put that in there. And so they went back to the place where the doctors met with the sheikh, and they said, okay, we're going to give you this elixir here. It's going to clean your whole body out. So just drink this, and then, when you go to the bathroom, you'll be fine. You should need to go to the bathroom very shortly, so, you're good. So the sheikh drank the drink, and then the psychologist put the dead snake in there. So he ran in there, used the bathroom. When he finished, he just felt like everything was gone. He looked in there, he saw the dead snake. He came into the room all happy and elated. And he says, oh, see, you guys have no idea. And then he took them in there. He said, look, there's a dead snake in there. And so he said, see, I told you. And so the Sheikh's problem obviously is that he didn't have a snake in there. He had a snake in his mind. He allowed whatever his problem was to become a snake in his stomach in his mind. And so what psychologists tell us is it's very strange that many people tend to gravitate towards the worst case scenario. And they start to think that things should be very bad. And that creates so much trauma on the self, on the psyche, on the morale, and the character of the person who is doing that. Obviously, we all know the Sheikh sounded ridiculous in what he was saying. So what we're really talking about here is what we call the placebo effect. The placebo effect is something amazing. When you study it deeply, there's so many studies. If I can explain it to you, I guess it's basically when you go to take a medicine, doctors will do a trial in certain things that are not immediate life-threatening things, and they will give you a placebo and then research how you responded to it and what happened and so forth. So almost a third of all people who take a placebo for some serious things like migraine headaches and menopause and stomach issues and many other issues, that they feel better again. And actually, the placebo effect has also been studied. This is even more interesting, is that people will feel like they'll be told what is the side effects of the drug that you're taking, which they're not taking a drug. So placebo it's really just a pill that doesn't have anything in it versus taking the real medicine at hand. So some people will be given the medicine and some people will be given the placebo, and they'll all be told that they've taken the medicine, and they won't know that they're in a placebo trial. So many people actually come forward talking about how I have the side effects of the drug, even though they were given a placebo, something that's not the drug. So the human mind, and as it relates to psychosomatic, this is psychophysiology, how your mind and your state of being relates to how you actually feel, is very powerful. And so we have to basically embrace this prophetic character, as the Prophet ﷺ said, يُعْجِبُنِي الْفَأْلِ الصَّالِحُ أُحِبُّ الْفَأْلِ, that I'm so moved and I'm so happy when people are optimistic. And the Prophet said, I love optimism. And they said, how do we know what is optimism? And the Prophet ﷺ defined it for them. It is to say something good, say something nice, say positive things, say good things. So we have to follow the prophetic model, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But at the end of the day, if we really break down what is happiness, what is true happiness, what is going to bring us to happiness? So before happiness, or the key to true happiness, is what we call contentment. Contentment is in essence the happiness that we're all looking for. So that's why when we look into the Quran, it is about devotion. It is about connecting to that which truly matters. الذين آمنوا وتطمئن قلوبهم بذكر الله ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب. It's this devotion, it's this connectivity to God. It's this feeling of the presence of God, that the believers are those who they become peaceful and happy and content when they're remembering Allah. When the remembrance of God gives us this state of peace and tranquility. Why? Because at the end of the day, all that really is and all that really matters of consequence is Allah. That is really all that matters. So He is the compassionate, the loving, the kind, the gentle, the peaceful, all of these things, all of this beauty and of these qualities that we know Him by. And so no matter what we're going through in this world, it is because of a disconnection from Him. Either we're having sin in ourselves, or either we're going through something that we realize through that situation that we are not in the immediate presence of God. We're in His creation, which is not part of Him, which is something that He is, by knowledge and compassion, dealing with at all times comprehensively. But at the end of the day, heaven is His presence. That there is a place of perfection, and this is not it. So we remember Him in realizing that what we're going through is because we are not in heaven. Heaven is a state of being close to Him, and so the more we're like that, the more we feel prepared for that. So that contentment with this world being what it is, knowing that what awaits us is what is really important. So the Quran, in Surah Duha, Allah وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. So your Lord will give you what you're looking for, and you will become content. You will become content with what you're given. He doesn't say litas'ad, and you'll become happy, because at the end of the day, contentment, to be happy with sufficiency, what you have, that you don't think that you deserve more than what you have. You don't think that the existence is upon your command, that the needs that you have are based on your desire. They're based upon the will of God, and we should be happy with that. And the more we embrace that lifestyle, the more we become in a state of contentment. And the Prophet ﷺ was like that, smiling, laughing, in a general state of peace and happiness all the time as a standard of character, even though he never had a lavish house like any of us. Like, everybody that's listening here generally sleeps in a much more comfortable bed, in a much bigger house, and has much more stuff than the Prophet ﷺ ever had as a prophet, even though it was always at his fingertips. And why was that? Because the Prophet ﷺ lived in service to other people. The Prophet ﷺ was living that merciful, compassionate, kind, gentle. The divine presence in his life gave him contentment because he lived in oneness with it to the best of his human capacity as our example. And so we find many documentaries that teach us and show us, many psychological evaluations that have shown us that when you live in service to other people, when you live in a state of peace with other people, when you're looking for goodness in a social realm, that will lead you to true happiness. It's not that you have a lot of money and have a lot of stuff. And so that's that devotion that will lead you to goodness. That's why the Quran tells us, من عمل صالحا من ذكر أو أنثى وهو مؤمن فلنحيينه حياة طيبة. So it says, whoever worked wholeness and righteousness and goodness, meaning to bring goodness to the world, whether male or female, as a believer, meaning knowing that you're doing that because you're in service to God, you're in closeness and connection to God in intention and in purpose and in action. When you do that, he says, we in the royal we will give you a good life. So that's how we reach this happiness and this goodness, is through service. And so MCC, one of the elements of our mission statement, engaged in the service of society. We have an organization of spiritual community that we have put together, and we envision that our devotion to God, our striving for excellence, building a community within the society, nurturing American Muslims engaged in the service of society. That's the consequence. And so we have many committees. Right now we have Team Connect, which is working to build relationships and see how we can better our relationship with our neighbors and the community at large, and the political realm, the educational realm. We have Team Compassion. There's so many projects of community service. We're sending them out. We need people to get involved. We need people to be, join Team Compassion and be on that volunteer list, ready to go out and do something for the welfare of others. That's what will lead us to true happiness. We're going to be sending out soon for the green team, and we have a medical team that's putting together, valuable advice for us all for our health and well-being. We have a social committee to bring people together. We have all of these opportunities that we're going to be sending out to get involved in an organized system of service, of manifesting the divine traits that blessed us with our life and everything we hold dear, so that we can be a source of that for other people. So this is how we're going to embody true happiness. This is how we're going to reach true comfort. I mean, what we're dealing with right now, at the end of the day, has many blessings. We could never underestimate the beautiful verse, إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. With the hardship will come many blessings and goodness and ease. So whether it be Trump, and we see that there's this whole body of people who need to be educated. There are so many people, we should see them as victims of a horrendous, historical, divisive political tactic that Trump has. Clearly, he's not the problem. He's just a symptom of the problem. The problem is this divisive politics, this system of historical racism that people don't even see that it's there, or that it's a problem, or that they are part of it. And so they just were born up into it. They don't know. And so it's an opportunity to feel like we should be more civically engaged. See, under previous, you will not imagine under President Obama, while he had beautiful oratory and was a much more decent person, many of his policies were totally against all of the greatness that America ascribes to and all of the greatness that we know from Islam that we are guided to promote in the world. There was many corruptions, but everybody was comfortable with it because the PR specialist up in the White House was presenting it as though everything is fine. See, with Trump, now we can see the problems of our governance. If we look at all of the main posts and the type of people that were there in terms of economy, in terms of health and all of that, it's not much of a difference in terms of the whole big picture. The big picture, things didn't change much. It's the way the PR was given to us. So under Trump, we have an opportunity to truly own our civic duty and to come together as people in a democracy and talk to our candidates and get registered to vote and join the activism. So with COVID, now we have all this time with our family. We can build better relationships. We have time. We have more time to worship and seek beneficial knowledge. So this is a blessing. This COVID thing, we'll be more careful about our health. We are studying science and how things work, and the racism and that it's systemic all around us. Now everybody's talking about it. It's an opportunity to truly engage in something that for many people now they're starting to pay more attention because now we're here at home and we're not all at work and so busy and the driving here and there so much. And so now we can sit and listen to the voices of Black America, see what they've been living through for 400 some years. So this is an opportunity. This is a blessing. These are good things so that we can live out Islam. So this is the perspective that we want to have, that we're happily living in service to Allah, that we're living a life of goodness and comfort in knowing that we are His servants in this world. So ask Allah to bless us all with happiness, with true happiness that will last forever, and that we will live a life of contentment with what we were created for and who we are. We are souls created in heaven, tested in this world. Do we choose to be connected to the source of our existence and the place of true perfection? Do we choose to be connected to that? Or do we choose to be connected to our own selfish desires and what we want out of this world? That's the reality that we're living in. That's the test. So may Allah give us success and bless everybody in our community with good health and happiness and contentment with our situation. Inshallah, we will be giving an update soon. I can tell you one thing. Here's a big blessing that you don't know. So throughout these last couple months, our tires were saved from so much gravel. And right now, there is a fully paved parking lot waiting for us when we come back. And alhamdulillah. So we're blessed. And so now what does that mean to us? That means now we need to get this paid off and now build our multi-purpose hall and get more active and get a cafe and a fitness center and get these things going for the community's welfare and to bring people together to do good. So it's all good, alhamdulillah. So may Allah bless your Jumu'ah and give your families contentment and happiness and goodness. And inshallah, we'll be giving you new announcements about where we're going to go next week. Inshallah, hopefully it will be back in the mosque. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.